Okay, we're going to continue our debate now, and for those of you who are watching in Dayton and also in Cincinnati, you can watch us as you always have been, and of course those of you on ABC6, hopefully you've joined us on ABC6onyourside.com. We're back to our studio audience. Sir, please join me over here. Tell us your name, where are you from, and what is your question?
My name is Dr. Kent Spann, and I'm from Grove City, and my question is to the panel from both sides there. We were referring to the issue of children and of education, and I have a quote here from a lesbian who teaches 8th grade sex education in Massachusetts, where she teaches her children how lesbians use sex toys in her 8th grade class. Alan Sears, I have a quote from a high school manual, Silver Lakes, Massachusetts, says, quote, testing your ability to function sexually and give pleasure to another person may be less threatening in your early teens with people of your own sex. You may come to the conclusion that growing up means rejecting the values of your parents.
And your question is?
My question is, if indeed this is what is going on, how are we going to protect our children, as you referred to a moment ago, that it would not come down? It does come down. Would you speak to that as a panel?
Ian?
The Freedom of Marrying Religious Freedom Amendment does not have a curriculum, portion in the 46 words. Children learn their values from their parents. Well, I don't know who this person is in Massachusetts. I don't know if they even exist. But I can tell you personally, I would find the greatest offense to that if someone was teaching that. But the constitutional amendment in Ohio doesn't speak to that, doesn't allow that, doesn't require it. And so I just kind of wonder.
But if you normalize it, then they have to teach it in school.
That's cuckoo. That is just absolutely normalizing. It requires that you teach it. Where does it say that? Where does it say that in the constitutional amendment?
I didn't say that. I said.
I know you didn't say that because it doesn't say that. It's a constitutional amendment. It's in the Constitution. When we put it in the Constitution, it's 46 words. It doesn't say we're going to teach it. I know. I'm just correcting you because it's just silly.
Then they have to teach it in education.
It's just silly.
If you'd asked 100 years ago whether we'd be debating about same sex.
Well, it's not in the constitutional amendment. You're suggesting that it's going to be required. It's just not true. It's just not true.
All right, Ken, so let's just say, for sake of argument, that same-sex marriage is legalized in the state of Ohio. Does it impact education? Is there some sort of quid pro quo, or from a legal perspective?
There's two things. First of all, California has Gay History Month now. It's whatever it's the wording in Ohio. Evidently, there are some people who don't approve of the language in your amendment that says it's not to be taught in the schools in Ohio. There are a number of states where it is being taught in the curriculum. The reality is, when you make something a matter of public policy, the issue that it would not get into public education, maybe not even required curriculum, but the idea that it's not going to come up and be discussed and hashed over.
Is it in here, Ken?
That's not realistic.
You're really focused on that amendment, and that's understandable from your perspective. For those of us in the other 49
because that's what we're going to
states,
vote on in this state.
But the issue is an issue that is right now evolving in terms of its reach in the court. If there is a federal constitutional right to gay marriage, then I would say your state amendment would be unconstitutional on federal grounds.
That's a reach.
And not as someone who's been practicing in the Supreme Court for a number of years, it's not.
Okay, let's take a break here on this because, again, social media is going nuts. Our Twitter account is blowing up. Adam, what do you have for us?
Yeah, that's right, Mark. And not only on Twitter, also on our Facebook page, abc6onyourside.com, which you're watching through right now. There's a Facebook thread going about the impact of gay marriage on kids of same-sex couples, specifically with bullying. And the viewers are wondering if the panelists believe that same-sex marriage will lead to bullying or make kids more accepting of kids that have same-sex mom and dad.
Elizabeth, you brought this up earlier, and it was an issue raised. Would legalizing same-sex marriage, in your opinion, perhaps reduce the amount of bullying of homosexual children, or those who see or appear to be homosexual? The whole bullying issue.
Well, let's be honest. Part of it would remain to be seen. But any time that you have parents that are happier, healthier, and that there is respect for a relationship and there is respect in a neighborhood, then obviously that decreases the tension around those issues. It takes the tension down. It also takes the opportunity for bullying down. Also, the other part of that, the truth is that nothing is easily solved or easily addressed, and the best way to protect all of us is to have laws that protect all of us, and we don't have that in Ohio. We do not have an anti-bullying law that protects us. We do not have a non-discrimination law. We do not have a hate crimes law. So we have quite a bit of work to do here. So marriage is extremely important, but it is also part of learning to and gaining and creating laws that protect and reflect.
Okay, Pastor, let's continue this because, all right, assuming same-sex marriage is legalized in Ohio, and we're talking about bullying of children, is that a positive benefit so that the children, the offspring, whether biological, whether they're adopted, would not be subjected to bullying as much? Would that be a positive benefit?
What is happening is teenagers who are raised with traditional values are being bullied. I have heard from many teenagers. In fact, one young lady was in a public school that began to wear ribbons in favor of gay marriage. If you didn't wear a ribbon, you were ostracized. On the Facebook page, one young man told me if you didn't have the equal sign on your Facebook page and you were a teenager, you were bullied for that. It is going the opposite way. If you stand for traditional values, you are the one that's bullied, and that's a shame.
This brings me to my next snap poll question of the evening. Your choices and answers are yes and no. My question is, do gay couples make good parents? Those who believe yes, please applaud. And those who believe no? We're back to the audience. Sir, please tell us who you are, where you're from. What is your question?
I'm Troy Braswell from South Bloomfield, Ohio. I, too, am a pastor called by God and ordained to the ministry of Word and Sacrament, and I support gay marriage. To ABC 6, I'll just like to say that the next time you do this, if you're going to have a pastor on one side, you ought to have one on the other side, too.
In our business, we call that an audition.
But my question is this, getting back to the original discussion a while back about the Constitution prohibiting the establishment of religion and the celebrating the freedom of religion. As I am an ordained minister, also called by God to bless the marriages of those I believe God has drawn together, I have seen and understand my definition of marriage to be that of a loving couple drawn together by God, and I believe God is love, and therefore love is of God.
And your question is?
Bless that. Does not the existing definition, therefore, defend your established definition of religion while denying mine, and at the same time also prohibiting, excuse me, I'm losing my train of thought here, but at the same time prohibiting my freedom of religion to marry those I believe God called together while defending your freedom of religion to do the same.
All right, so we have dueling pastors here. So, Pastor, I'm going to put that because I think that was sort of the question was addressed. So we have two pastors, Christian, I presume. So he believes in gay marriage. You don't. How do we reconcile that? Can we? Should we?
You're certainly welcome to your view, and I appreciate your willingness to speak. But things that are different can never be the same.
That's right.
Same-sex marriage, and I hate, this is. I'm just trying to be real on this. Two men marrying can never be marriage, no matter what word we attach to it, because our Creator created a man and a woman, and brought them together.
Elizabeth, I presume you don't agree.
Well, I don't. That is certainly one view. And I understand and respect your belief that marriage is something that is ordained or something by God. However, that's a different conversation. That is and we're not a theocracy, right? So we have all kinds of different views about marriage and family and how that plays out and what it takes to get married in a certain church or in a synagogue. They're all different things. And I actually do respect all of that. But we also have a set of laws that are civil, that over, 1,100 or more laws that not only mention marriage, but that provide certain very specific rights and benefits, as well as responsibilities. And again, we're a democracy, and when the law defines and gives benefits and protections to certain people, then everyone should be treated equally. And it isn't about, when you talk about defining, and it's a certain definition, you can define those things as you wish within your church, but when we're talking about the law, we all need to be treated equally. We know that. We know that.
All right, actually, the moderator is going to ask a question here. There's been a lot of discussion about marriage, but let's assume for a moment there's a difference between civil unions and marriage. Okay, take out the religious aspect. So if a civil union would allow a same-sex couple to have all the legal issues, such as the issue with contracts, inheritance, hospital visitation, would this solve the issue if same-sex couples could have something that was called anything, but not a marriage because they had a religious aspect to it? Ian, would that be fair? Would it solve it if we called it civil unions as an example?
No, because
and why not?
Well, because then you're saying, okay, I'm married, and that has immediate recognition with people versus I'm civil unioned, right? And then I'm civil unioned with whom, and what in the world does that even mean, right? I mean, all of a sudden, you then have to, it's bad enough you have to carry around contracts with you to explain what your relationship is, where I can point to this ring and say, I'm married.
Also, the problem with that question is the whole frame of it, right? I mean, when you say that to me, and to many people, what we hear on the other side of that is that somehow me having the same rights and benefits that you do somehow cheapens or lessens the marriage certificate you have. Well, it doesn't. So why would we create a whole second class, a whole different class of things, when in fact we should all be treated equally?
So Ken, from a legal perspective, besides just a formal contract, should there be a difference between a civil union and a marriage? Would it address the concerns that same-sex couples have, or is it just not?
The only way you could do that is if you were to define it without reference to any marriage at all, to say that any two or more people, I still don't know why we're talking about two, that if you have, there are plenty of people who never get married who might live with their mother for the rest of their life. And there are siblings who live together for their whole lives. There are best friends who live together for their whole lives. And it's an entirely platonic relationship all the way around, but they certainly love each other, they're committed to each other, and they're there for each other during the tough times. If you would, by law, to establish, to say that anyone can sign into a registry or whatever, or get some sort of state-issued license where all of these benefits go regardless, that would be one way of doing it. But if you are instead taking benefits that are reserved to marriage and extending them to non-married couple, the whole legal theory behind marriage is that two individuals become one person. That's why they can't testify against each other. That's why they have instant transferability of property. That's why you have joint custody issues. So those things you could not, you're just creating marriage by a different name. But I still don't understand, there are thousands of imams in this country who cannot marry a man to more than one woman, despite the fact that he's a Muslim, the people before him are Muslims, and they'd like to be married to more than one person. And I still haven't heard an answer from my friends on the other side as to why they demand marriage equality for them, but not for all of these other types of marriage as well. So they want to draw lines, they just want to draw them in a different place. It's not equality for everyone.
You can circulate a petition, and if you are so hung up on circulate a petition, Ken, and if you are so hung up on letting 3 or more people get married, you have the right to circulate a petition and put it on the ballot. You seem to like it. You want it to be the case.
Ian,
I'm just saying you have that right to do that.
Ian, you're saying
we don't agree with
equality for me, but not for people who are different.
We just don't agree. We just don't agree with you. We just don't agree with you, Ken.
We're all saying. saying that we draw
And
lines.
before
We're
we were
just
actually on the
disagreeing.
same, we were on the same page. So I don't know where the disconnect has come.
We're on the same page that we're all drawing lines. We're just drawing them in different places.
I think polygamy.
All right, I want to give both the pastor and Elizabeth a quick jump into this, but real brief. Okay, both of you.
I'll be real quick, Mark. I brought an article with me because it seems as though this subject is marginalized with just some chuckles. But Brazil legalized same-sex marriage in 2004. This article says Brazil has just now done the first marriage of a trio.
That's right.
One man, two women. And the reason they did it is because the argument for approving same-sex marriage, the reasoning, is the same reasoning to approve any consensual relationship.
And there are people who are okay with that. I know people who say, sure, and I believe in polygamy as well. I think it should all be legal.
I want to bring Elizabeth
There are
into
people
this.
who honestly
Elizabeth?
believe that.
Well, I think we're talking about societal
the right
change
to.
and how things change. And I will go back to the fact that marriage is not this immutable, unchanging object in our lives. It's a civil institution. It has changed. And thank heavens that it's changed in the ways that it has, so that women are no longer property, so that interracial couples can be married. And I think when we talk about polygamy, I do not think that we're at that moment of social change. I also think it's a smokescreen that is brought up to scare people. And I hope that you're not blinded by it. Because there are plenty of reasons. There are plenty of reasons for. There are plenty. I will finish my thought.
I'm
There
just saying,
are
let's not
plenty
insult each other.
of-
We can all try and get along, and we don't have to insult each other's motivations or what we're trying to
There
do.
are plenty of reasons for the government to have an interest in not acknowledging polygamy, the least of which is the way in which women are treated within polygamy. So let's just be honest about it. I don't think that polygamy is on the table for whatever reason it may be brought up. And what is on the table in our society right now is marriage equality. It is the right to be treated equally, to have the same benefits, the same responsibilities under the law. That's what we're talking about.
I know we're getting a lot of comments throughout the state of Ohio. A lot of folks want to weigh in this. So let's go back to our social media desk. Adam, what do you have for us?
Lots of tweets and lots of Facebook discussion, Mark. We're going to go right to a tweet from Jess, and we're using the hashtag #YourVoiceYourFuture. And she just has a simple question for the entire panel, and that is, what effects on the economy would gay marriage have?
All right. In fact, I actually want to go through with each one of you a couple, but make it really brief. Short answers. Ian.
We've actually commissioned a study. The study was commissioned last year. It shows that Ohio stands to gain $126 million in the first 3 years. It creates over 1,100 jobs when we have marriage equality, because you actually have more people getting married. You have more people buying flowers. You have more people going to hotels. You have more people coming into the state. It does create a lot of revenue for the state, and it creates jobs.
Elizabeth, anything to add on that?
Well, I think that that's a survey about the future, but you can also look at what's happened in other jurisdictions, and specifically in the first year in New York City, it was over $250 million into that city in 1 year. So from all those things that we're talking about, but it is more than an economic argument. Don't ever forget that it's about love, it's about family, it's about how we treat our relationships, it's about how we respect each other and how we respect our neighbors.
Woo! Amen. And in all fairness to the question, they wanted to address the economic aspect. So, Pastor, it's a tough economy out there. Couldn't we use a few more jobs, a little more money?
Well, thankfully, it should never be economy as the criteria for whether something's right or wrong. That's a slippery slope. For instance, we could put a small little booth on every corner and sell illegal drugs and tax it, and it'd raise a whole bunch of money. But it certainly isn't right to do.
Okay.
There were dozens of briefs filed at the Supreme Court. I filed one of them. There are actually studies on both sides, both in terms of the economic data and the social data. Certainly the preeminent national social science leaders that myself and another professor were representing said that the reality is, in terms of objective econometric or social data, it'll be years or even decades before we have a large enough body of objective data to be able to make those assessments. At this point, everyone is speculating, which is why briefs were filed on both sides of the case. Both. It's good for the economy. It's bad for the economy. It's good for social science. It's bad for social science. The briefs are all over the place because we just don't have the data because it's a very new institution. It's only been around in this country for a decade.
And
Let's go
so
back
glad
to our
that we're
studio
being
audience.
kind with each other because my right to marry just got compared to selling illegal drugs.
Let's go back to the studio audience. Please tell us your name, where you're from, and what is your question?
I'm Doug from Columbus, Ohio, and I'm hoping that one thing we can all agree on is that there shouldn't be bullying on either side of the issue, whatever you think, or resorts to name calling, and that would include, hopefully, for all those who are involved on the internet anonymously. So my question is about the nature of marriage. I'm wondering, first off, on the one side, Mr. Kuklowski, is it possible to make a case for the conjugal view of marriage without building it solely on, say, one or several religions? Can you just look at human nature, make some sort of argument from that? Whereas on the other side, from several things that were said, I'm a bit unclear as to exactly what the view is on the nature of marriage. There was one expression of constructivism, that it's sort of whatever we define as a society. But then there was the other argument that, well, we should be able to marry whom we love, to be able to support them and have that publicly acknowledged, and that further we should be able to share the benefits and burdens of domestic life. So my question for that is, both theoretical and practical, theoretically, what's the principled basis for having that just to be two persons rather than for whoever you love? If you love three people, whatever it is, there are, if I remember the statistic accurately, it's about 500,000 polygamous relationships in America. There's also a statement by 300 LGBT activists called Beyond Same-Sex Marriage, arguing that we should go beyond just the two. So I'm wondering, theoretically and practically, what's the principal grounds for limiting it to two, if it's about whom you love?
And hopefully he's not going to test us on this later. Thank you for your question. So Elizabeth, you addressed the question. So, and I know you were discussing it, you and Ken and the others, about drawing the lines. So how do we draw those lines with respect to who, if consenting adults want to do something, how do we draw those lines?
Well, first the question started actually with the evolving definition of marriage. And one of the things that I think, we've talked about what marriage is about, what it feels like, but I do go back to the Supreme Court attributes that were in the case in 1987 about marriage being an expression of emotional support and public commitment, spiritual significance behind that for some. For some, that's actually a religious faith expression, the expectation that for most the marriage will be consummated, and then the receipt of tangible benefits, including government benefits and property rights. So when I think about drawing lines around that right now, again, I think there are ideas that we are evolving around the idea of marriage right now. However, I do believe that there's a strong government interest in protecting women in terms of gender and gender rights within a marriage. So I think that's one of the reasons for drawing a line right now around polygamy.
Ken, I see you're itching to get into
Well, oh, sure. What about a polygamous marriage of three men? There's no subjugation of women going on there, or four men, or three women, or four women. What if it's a single-sex, multi-person wedding? Marriage, then you have no gender equality. So I think that takes care of that. Also, if you're going to get into the Supreme Court has said that when we talk about fundamental rights that are not expressly in the text of the Constitution, it is only those relationships that are deeply rooted in American history and tradition. They reaffirmed that as recently as 2010 McDonald v. Chicago in terms of what a fundamental right is. Only marriage between one man and one woman meets that criterion, and that is why in 1878 in Reynolds versus U.S., why the Supreme Court said that even though it was compelled by someone's religion, that there was no constitutional right to polygamy. And they drew the line at traditional marriage in 1878 as they've developed their jurisprudence. Again, they say a fundamental right is something that was found at the inception of the Constitution and has enjoyed universal or widespread acceptance from then until now, which in 1967 they said was marriage of one man and one woman regardless of race, and was part of their loving decision in striking down a ban in some states, not all, on interracial marriage. So I think there's a number of constitutional issues there, but we don't have time to unpack each.
So I'm confused now, right? So is polygamy constitutional or is it not
Oh,
constitutional?
there's no constitutional right to polygamy, just like there's no constitutional right to same-sex marriage.
So
polygamy is legal.
But you were just arguing.
Polygamy
You were
is
just
legal.
arguing that the Supreme Court said.
No, because the Supreme Court was raised by someone else. I'm saying that polygamy is legal in many nations, but it's not mandated to be legal in the supreme law of this land. I think it's a matter. Everyone knows polygamy is legal in other countries, right? I mean, we all know that. I don't have to start listing countries. There are countries where there is legal polygamy, and they've had it for thousands of years longer than they've had gay marriage.
All right, this is a great opportunity. I asked my last snap poll question of the evening. This is where we kind of turn the camera back on us. So your response by a sound of applause, yes or no. My question is, news organizations have presented the same-sex marriage issue in a thoughtful, impartial, and balanced approach. Those who believe yes, please applaud. Those who believe no.
We can all agree on that one. It's always great when you can find common ground.
I will be
We're all on the
unemployed
same
as of
page.
tomorrow morning. Please join me over here. Please tell us your name, where you're from, and what is your question?
My name is Ty Marie, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. And first, I just have to say that this is a messed up country when a straight man can cheat on his wife, but a man who's been with the same guy for 30 years can't get married. Now, my question is, I'm sure everybody has heard of the separation of church and state. So what happened to separate but equal? One of you guys, I can't remember who it was, brought up the bathroom reference. You got the men's, you got the women's. Okay, the point is you still have a restroom. So aren't we entitled to have a marriage?
All right, Pastor, you brought up the bathroom analogy.
You are entitled to a marriage, but it's to a man.
What if I'm an atheist? What if I don't believe in your God, but I believe in a different God? Should you push your religious views on me because separation of church and state?
Okay.
Separation of church and state does not mean, and I pray it never means, separation of morality from our nation.
And it's not in the Constitution either. That phrase is not found in the Constitution.
All right, I want to take a moment and go back to our social media desk because right now I understand that the hashtag Your Voice, Your Future is now the trending topic in all of Columbus. So right now that means everybody is tweeting on this topic. Adam, what do you have for us?
Not surprising.
That is correct, Mark. It is. It's a very popular topic right now, trending in Columbus, as you mentioned. Again, that's hashtag Your Voice, Your Future. And we are continuing to get several questions on this issue, and really a lot of them surround the impact on society. And I think the question on many minds is just, when you take religion out of the equation, how does it impact society negatively? And that's for everybody.
Ian?
How does it impact society negatively? I think that anytime that two people who love each other and are committed to each other and want to be able to care for and protect each other have the right to be married so that they can best do that, especially when in a time of crisis, that there is no negativity to that. I've been married to my husband, Stephen, for almost 10 years, and I dare say that it has had zero impact on anybody else's life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness in this room, on the internet, or anywhere in this world.
Greg?
I
Doesn't seem to be a
disagree.
problem.
It does affect, because those of us who believe in traditional family values have to run to the TV every hour, it seems, and turn it off so our children don't see it.
All right, let's go back to the studio audience for another question. Sir, please step down here. Tell us your name, where you're from, and what is your question?
My name is David Gutierrez, and I am from Columbus, Ohio. And this is a two-part question. This is for Ian. If the amendment passes, what does it mean to Ohio churches, synagogues, or any type of religious organization? Will my priest, pastor, or my church be required to perform or recognize these marriages?
Ian?
The constitutional amendment will have zero impact on house of worship. House of worship will continue to have the right to decide whether or not they wish to perform or recognize a marriage. It will not alter that one iota. In fact, it's written into the Constitution to protect religious freedom, to respect religious freedom, so that you don't have to perform or recognize any marriage that you don't want to, which you currently have the right to do right now. We are just writing that in to make sure that that is very clear. And in fact, the Attorney General, Mike DeWine, indicated or approved the summary that it protects religious institutions.
Ken, do you agree with that?
Well, again, that would depend. I mean, what if you get another attorney general in a few years and they come up with something contrary? What if you get new people on the Ohio Supreme Court who choose to read it a different way? The California Supreme Court decided that provision in their California state constitution was itself unconstitutional. So then the people amended the Constitution. Then it gets taken into federal court as to whether it violates the federal Constitution. If the issue is federalized by the U.S. Supreme Court, then as we've seen, if there is something that is federal constitutional policy, the courts have the power to strike down any state law, including a state constitutional provision that's contrary to it. And I mean, anyone with any experience in constitutional law knows that we see it all the time.
So, the question we addressed it earlier in the SNAP poll was, will the Supreme Court's ruling, opinion that's handed down later settle this? Clearly, we're seeing is that this is going to be an issue. Regardless of what happens, it's going to be in the courts in one form or fashion for some period of time. Okay, we're going to try to squeeze one more question in here. Sir, please step down here for a moment. Please tell us your name, where you're from, and what is your question?
James Winnett from Columbus, Ohio. My question is for Ken. Ken, I see you're from the Center for Freedom of Religion. Is that
I'm with several think tanks. I'm on faculty at Liberty University School of Law.
But what's exactly on the front of your...
I can't see it. I'm sitting behind it.
Could someone read
Center
that?
for Religious Freedom.
Okay. You're from the Religious Freedom. So our amendment here, or that Ian James has just read, gives organizations or religious organizations the right to choose who they can and cannot marry. So if I go to a church that chooses to marry me legally, if this amendment passes, would you be opposed to that?
Would I be opposed to a church being able to perform a gay marriage if gay marriage was legal in the state of Ohio?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I personally believe marriage is the union of one man and one woman, but again, I acknowledge that there are all sorts of different types of marriage all over the globe, and if Ohio creates gay marriage, then a church here could do gay marriage, just like if they legalize polygamy, the Muslim imams can perform polygamous marriages. So, I mean, it's whatever the law happens in that regard, we see that in several states right now. In fact, gay marriage is legal in several states.
Ian, it's your amendment we were addressing.
Look, again, house of worship are not going to be required to perform or recognize a marriage, period. I mean, underscore, bold it, put it in italics, put it in 52 font. That's just the way it is, and saying it ain't so, it just ain't so. It's 46 words, pretty easy to understand. That's why actually a majority of Ohioans support the amendment, and we believe will actually repeal and replace the 2004 marriage ban with it.
We're going to have to leave it there because we've run out of time. But what you've witnessed tonight is spirited and passionate debate. And we've seen a wide range of opinions. Those who believe marriage is a union of just one man and one woman, to those who believe that any two consenting adults can marry. This much I think I can say with confidence, that regardless of what label we place on it, the one thing that everyone wants to do is to be able to spend their lives with the person they love. That I think we all agree on. The question is, can they and should they call it marriage? And that's what we explored tonight. On behalf of our panel, our audience members, the staff and crew of ABC 6, I'd like to thank everyone who joined us this evening and for participating in tonight's town hall. We'd like to thank you for taking time out of your schedule and your time to be a part of this debate. And finally, in closing, we'd like to salute our armed forces, our law enforcement, firefighters, and other first responders for all that they do. From the campus of Ohio State University, thank you and good night.